In this Skype interview with Line 6 product managers Andrew Bonica and Arna Walbrecker, we discuss the state of the wireless industry. Andrew and Arna outline the specific ways that Line 6 is making sure their systems continue to function well into the future, protecting their customers' investments in Line 6 products.
UHF wireless systems are kind of vulnerable right now to auctions by the FCC, where they're selling off the radio spectrum to the highest bidder, essentially, which has already rendered several wireless microphone and instrument systems useless because they're illegal to use once that spectrum is sold off. And that's one of the primary reasons why Line 6 has stayed in the 2.4 gigahertz band of spectrum, because that is immune to those types of auctions because it's what's called an ISM band. Basically, because that's what our Wi-Fi and everything else runs off of, there's no chance of anybody just coming in and rendering that unusable at the moment. So we feel that it's pertinent to stay in that realm of spectrum because it's going to be the most reliable in terms of longevity and value for your investment. We don't have any compression whatsoever, and we're able to capture the full frequency spectrum of the audio signal. So that's why, bass players are able to retain their low end, guitarists retain all the high end harmonics, and everything's super clean from end to end. Even though there are other digital systems out there, I think the real difference with ours and some of the other ones is that you either get, with the Line 6 system, you either get fully pure quality signal that's 100% accurate of what you put into it, or it mutes. So if there is some drastic interference that can't be compensated for, the system will just mute. So you won't get any staticky artifacts and things that you would get with an analog system. Typically in the past, folks that do these kind of training sessions go over this wireless 101, and we covered a little bit of background, but usually they give you all kinds of these crazy charts and things, but this is not that. We are not going to be going over any of that stuff. I want to keep this very simple and straightforward so the dealers know exactly how the systems work at the most simplest level and can remember this stuff, because you're never going to remember all of these different frequencies and things. I just want to talk for a second about microphone versus guitar wireless. So with microphone wireless, it's traditionally managed by the front of house team, and you usually have a dedicated wireless technician for big events, or the front of house guy or gal manages that. So vocalists don't really have to worry. But when it comes to guitar wireless, it's a whole separate world, because the guitar wireless is part of the guitar player's rig. So it's either handled by the guitarists themselves, if they're not a large touring A-list musician, or they have their own technician. But the thing is that the guitarist, as well as their technician, have lots of other things to do, so they don't really have time to worry about wireless. As we know, there's many great wireless microphone companies and solutions out there. We may be a little bit biased, but there's definitely tried and true solutions out there. But the fact of the matter is, the guitar transmitter is really a secondary product for those companies. It arose out of, well, we already have a body pack transmitter for lavaliers and headset microphones, so why not just use the same package and throw a 1/4-inch connector or something else on it so we can use it for guitars? So the difference with Line 6 is we're a guitar company first and foremost. So I don't think anybody else, especially in the wireless world, cares more about guitar tone than we do. It's been our focus from day one. So our sole purpose here, and part of our company values, is to create solutions for guitarists, and wireless is one of those solutions. Just to give you a little overview, this is really going to be basic. I want to make it as simple as 1, 2, 3. To cover our product line here, as we see, 1, 2, 3 correlates again. We have these things called RF modes, and it's the way that the radios operate. Some of our systems that have been on the market a little bit longer, as the ones you see here, these 4 systems, they operate in either RF1 or RF2 mode. The Relay G10, which is our newest wireless product, only operates in the RF2 mode. One of our newer systems, just before the G10, was the Relay G70 and G75. Now, those use a slightly different radio technology, and they operate in the RF3 mode. So, again, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. We do have this really good comparison chart on our website that if you forget, you can just go to this chart and it'll tell you what modes these things operate in. Okay. So what does this all mean? RF1 basically hops on 4 frequencies, and it works great if it's the only mode. If you have one wireless system or a few from that first group that I showed you, and they're all set to RF1, it's great. The problem becomes when you have RF2 and 3, which are similar in how they operate, although they do use different frequencies. They cannot work when RF1 mode is available. Again, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. If 1 is the only one, it's good. But if you're using any of our newer wireless systems like the G70, 75, or G10, that you can't use RF1 mode. But 2 and 3 can coexist. Similarly, if you select a channel on something that has RF2 mode running, don't use that same channel in RF3. So anything before the G70, 75 series, the ones that have the option to run on both, when you turn the system on, it'll tell you what mode it's in. So it's easy to find out.
Yeah, just for context, maybe to make it even more clear, in general, there are some older Line 6 devices that have the legacy mode RF1, and that's where you have to be careful that that doesn't get mixed with the newer ones. If there is a problem, it's highly likely that it's that. If it's something newer with RF2 or 3, you'll never see it, you never have to think about it. We're just for good measure mentioning if you have an older legacy device that has this RF1 mode, it becomes an issue.
Yep. Since 2010, all of the systems other than the G70, 75 ship in RF2 mode. So you don't even really have to worry about it. Like Arnie said, this is mainly for folks that maybe pick up a new system and are intermingling it with an older system. Just to give you a little background, this past fall, I actually went out to start a Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare anniversary tour. And while he's not a Line 6 artist, he's been using our Relay G90 wireless since 2011. And actually, for the whole band, they have a total of 5 Line 6 Relay wireless systems. So Dave Weiner, his second guitarist, also uses a G90 and has been using it even longer than Steve for his main guitar. But he also uses 2 of the newer G70 systems for an acoustic guitar and a sitar that he uses in between songs. Philip Bino, Steve's bassist, is an official Line 6 artist, and he's using the Helix and a G70 with that. So before we arrived, the stage looked like this. So Steve's obviously up in front, Dave's to the right of the drums, and Philip's to the left, and they have their respective systems. So all of these systems were set independently. So you had Dave's main guitar running off RF1, Steve's running on RF2, and all the G70s, of course, only run on RF3, which, if you guys remember from a couple slides ago, you can't use 1 when you're using 2 and 3. Once we properly configured the system, which really just involved switching Dave's to RF2, they no longer had any dropout issues because they played a show the night before we even saw anything, and Dave was fine, but Steve had a couple of intermittent issues here and there. But it really just came down to properly configuring the system, and that's what I think is a big misconception that a lot of folks have when something doesn't work. They just blame the product, but really, if you just take a step back for a few moments, and I know it's intense in a live sound situation, and just look at your setup beforehand, just follow these guidelines, then you'll be fine. So the other thing, too, was we went ahead and actually assigned the channels in a more logical manner. So I recommend for folks using our wireless systems to start with channels 1 through 5 for high priority signals, such as like Steve is on 1 and 2 because he's the main act. We did a channel scan, and those were the best channels for that venue. Dave was kind of right behind Steve with channel 3 and Philip on 4. The other 2 that Dave were using were kind of secondary. like I said, for just intermittent parts of certain songs. So we just set those to a couple channels that were open in the higher end of the channel spectrum. The way we've arranged our channels is there's 3 primary channels that most Wi-Fi systems use. By the way, those numbers that they use for Wi-Fi channels do not correspond to our wireless systems. The 3 primary channels that they use, we try to keep our wireless systems away from those. 1 through 5 are the furthest, basically, away from those 3 primary channels. And the other channels, 6 through up to 16, if you're using a G70 system, are still outside of those primary Wi-Fi channels, but they're just a little bit closer. Being more prone to dropouts really just depends on the environment that you're in. So that's why I recommend when you go venue to venue during sound check to do a channel scan, which you can do on our professional systems like the G90 and G70. Basically, it was Steve at sound check and then Steve during the performance, and everything worked flawlessly for the rest of the tour.